What's up, guys? This is Matt with Flagstaff Camera and Hidden Light, and today we are continuing our sort of talking about printing. And what I want to talk about today is the final step in the printing, photography, art making process, and that's display, specifically framing. If you're going to spend oodles and oodles of money having beautiful prints made of your work, you should know what to look for in custom picture framing, who to talk to, the questions to ask, some of the general pitfalls. Basically, I want to bring you with me as I look at my framing options for this print. We're going to talk through what I'm going to use, the materials, the questions you would ask me if this was your print, and generally get some framing done. So let's just dive straight in. Okay, so picture framing. Welcome to the framing department, which is the side of our business that does picture framing, right? One-stop shopping, can't beat it. We're gonna work our way from the bottom to the outside, bottom to the top, inside to the outside of a finished piece, just to sort of give you a feel for some things you should consider. So, one, got your print, bring it to the picture framer, you're doing great. One of the first things we're gonna do is measure the print and figure out if you want to include all these crazy hippie brushstroke border shenanigans. For me personally, I like to show about 1/4 inch of those brushstroke shenanigans. So I'm not going to show the whole border. I'm not going to completely omit it. We're just going to show a little. How are you going to show that? Well, you need a mat board. What kind of mat board are you going to use? There's a zillion different kinds of mat boards, right? You want a museum quality. What the word you're looking for is museum cotton rag. Okay, it's going to be the most expensive option, obviously, but it's also going to be the one that lasts the longest and imparts the least amount of nasty things to your artwork, right? So, got myself a nice couple of museum cotton rag boards, and you probably can't tell, but I've got two different thicknesses of board. I've got a 4-ply, which is a standard thickness, and an 8-ply, which is a double thickness board. You always want at least an 8-ply's worth of thickness. So that could be 2 8-ply boards stacked on top of each other to show a little bit of depth, or one 8-ply board. One 8-ply is sort of my jam. So what I would then do is say, okay, here's my picture. Turn it around so maybe you guys can see a little. And I'm going to show 1/4 inch of that black border right there. I could then also add additional mat boards to give myself a little more depth, or add something different, a little bit of different color in there to sort of spice things up. Give yourself another layer or two. Who knows, right? Again, cotton rag, mat boards for everything. And you do want a mat board for any piece of art that you care about. If you don't include mat board with your art, you're going to end up mounting it. Most mounts end up being irreversible. So if I wanted to take this picture, trim off all the borders, and just stick a frame right to the edge, the way that most frame shops would do that would be to permanently mount it. This print is worth some money. It's a platinum print, and I don't want to do that. I want someone else to be able to unframe this. I want someone else to be able to look at the back where I've signed it and written the edition number and the year it was made, all that stuff. You can't do that if you mount it permanently. So mat boards avoid that, and they also give you some spacing between the artwork and the glass, because you're going to use glass and generally not plexiglass. We'll talk about that in a second. So I'm going to do a single 8-ply cotton rag museum mat board, showing 1/4 inch of my hippie brushstroke borders just to give me a little bit of depth, a little bit of difference. Then I'm going to have my 8-ply board. Then I need to choose a frame. Lots of frames out there. So many frames from so many different companies. I tend to be biased towards frames that are made of real wood. Generally, a lot of frames these days are made from pine, and then they're covered with a veneer or they're stained to look something. So this guy here, and maybe we'll take a picture of it, show it close up so you can see it. It's pine on the base, and then it's got a bunch of other layers of stuff that give it the texture and the feel of an old world hand-carved picture frame, because it's definitely not that. They make this with pine and they make it cheap and easy. The other way to do this, and the thing I prefer to do with platinums, is walnut, or generally speaking, proper hardwood frames. There are companies out there that do a great job. Shout out to Picturewoods. Incredible company, amazing to work with. They make these incredible frames out of real walnut, and then they stain them. The stain plus the walnut, for me, is the ideal picture framing for a platinum print. It's this sort of black, brown, beautiful wood grain structure that just can't beat it, right? I'm avoiding, at all costs, metal frames, frames made out of MDF, frames made out of particle board, frames made out of plastic. Plastic and metal are the two frames that I will not use on anything for any reason. Plastic, because it will just fall apart someday for no reason at all. Metal, because it breaks glass. I don't know if you've ever played with glass and metal close to each other. It's a great way to break lots of glass. The wood will typically allow the glass to dig into it, to expand, to, just basically beat it up a little bit, but it won't break the glass nearly as often as a metal frame will. Plastic, of course, will fall apart. MDF, particle board stuff are okay. I don't prefer them. There are companies that make them that do a fine job, but I'd rather have something made out of ideally hardwood or less ideally pine. So those are the frames that I'm going to sort of gear towards. This one is one from Picturewoods. It's made out of walnut. Incredible. Now we need glass, or glazing of some kind. That's what you call the thing that you can see through that protects the print, hopefully. Lots of different kinds of this as well. You can have just your standard, boring picture framing glass, or you can go all the way up to museum grade, which is going to block 99.9% of UV light. It's going to have an anti-reflective coating. It's the thing that you're going to use to make your print look its best and last the longest. Of course, it's the most expensive. I'm going to recommend museum glass. I'm going to use it when I put this piece together, just so that I know I've done everything in my power to make this print look good and last long. Plexiglass is also an option. They make plexiglass with that same or a similar museum coating. It's very expensive. Seriously expensive. Much more so than museum glass. It's also easy to scratch. So if you were wiping it with a cloth that had a little piece of something on it, you'll scratch the acrylic before you scratch the glass. The nice thing about the acrylic is if it happens to travel, you're way less likely to shatter it. I mean, shattering acrylic is next to impossible to do in a picture framing setting. Shattering glass can definitely be done, especially if you're shipping artwork back and forth, or you're moving to the other side of the country, or whatever. So I tend towards glass because it's less expensive for the same general aesthetic. But if you need acrylic, you need acrylic, it's an option. In order to get the picture to stay inside the mat board and relatively flat, there are a bunch of mounting options that you can ask for. I will typically ask for photo corners is my first choice, followed by a sink mount, which is something that a lot of frame shops don't offer. A sink mount is something that uses no adhesives, plastics, tapes, none of that of any kind. It just uses tension between a couple of mat boards that have been cut a certain way to hold the piece in place. It tends to be a little expensive because of that. Photo corners are cheap and everybody has them. They're not going to hurt your picture. They're easy to swap things out, remove, change. So that's generally my first choice just because it's so much cheaper. Photo corner, sink mount, and a hinge mount are all acceptable to me. Things I don't want to do to my platinum prints are typically dry mount, which some of them are reversible and some of them use acid-free adhesive and some of them are not reversible and some of them use terrible adhesives. The one thing I tell my framing customers is that all adhesives fail. If we are using an adhesive anywhere in your picture framing, it will eventually fail. Sometimes that's not a big deal. Sometimes if it's the one thing holding your whole thing together, in 100 years, your whole thing's gonna come falling apart and maybe that's not what you want. I mean, you'll probably be dead, sure, but whoever has the piece probably won't enjoy watching it fall apart. So photo corners for mounting is great. Hinges is fine. Sink mounts is like baller. They tend to be expensive. So, you know, the words you're looking for are, when you walk into a frame shop, museum grade, right? First and foremost, you tell them you want museum grade. They know you're a serious customer. You know what you want. And you know that you're going to end up paying some money for this, because museum grade is the best of the best and it's not going to be cheap. So if you do a custom frame, right, for my very strangely sized image here, I could expect to get this out the door for, I don't know, $500 or $600, right? Or I can fit it in a ready-made. Ready-made is a frame size that you would consider to be popular or standard. 8 by 10, 11 by 14, 16 by 20, 20 by 24, 24 by 30, 24 by 36, 30 by 40. Those are the standard sizes. I've happened to decide that this piece will look just fine in a ready-made walnut frame. It's going to have a little bottom weight. It's going to have a nice little 8-ply mat on it. I'm going to swap the glass out for museum glass, put a wire hanger on the back, and you are set. That's kind of the general idea here. Feel free to wander back through the video and kind of watch it again, get a feel for what I'm saying. If you have any questions about picture framing, do's, don'ts, drop those in the comments below. I'd love to answer your questions and hear how things have gone for you and your images. That's basically it. I guess we'll see you in the next one.